and welcome back to the Knits and Notions podcast. That name is kind of really hard to say. I'm Kira, and I use they, them pronouns. And this is the second ever episode of my podcast. So I'm very excited to talk all about the knitting and a lot of spinning that I have been doing since last episode. I want to say thank you to everybody who watched the first episode. It was really nice to be able to feel comfortable to show myself in this more vulnerable format online and to hear from, some of my knitting friends that, they enjoyed my podcast, enjoyed watching it. And it feels really nice and it's cool. And also, in the time that it took me to film this episode, I became really hyper aware of a lot of other people's knitting podcasts too, because they all got recommended to me en masse in YouTube, which is great. So I was really excited. So it's kind of cool. I feel like now that I've started podcasting, I've become more aware of other knitting podcasters on YouTube, and I've really been enjoying and feeling super inspired and very creatively energized in this time of my life. So yeah, thank you everybody who's received the first episode well. So today I thought I would do a little bit of a life catch up with you all. Because as I've mentioned in my first episode, this will probably be a space for me to discuss a little bit more intimately, in a way, what I'm going through, what's up with me, as well as how, creativity and making fits into all of that. So yeah, today I do have a lot of whips. I have like I mentioned, a lot of spinning, finished yarns actually. That's very exciting to talk about. As well as just a little bit of life stuff. So I think I might save the life stuff towards the end just in case people aren't as interested in it, or maybe it will come out while I'm going through everything. It is almost September, and this next weekend it is going to be 109 degrees Fahrenheit outside. So I'm really not thrilled about the state of California right now, specifically Southern California, because I know those of you up in the Bay Area and everywhere like that, which I'm very jealous of you. You have a lot nicer weather than we do right now. So yeah, I'm just kind of struggling my way through the tail end of summer and really hoping it will end sometime soon, because I need to not immediately start sweating bullets every time I go outside. And speaking of going outside, this morning I had to go out because I had to get some pain medications for Spicy. So if you're aware, my rabbit Spicy has been sick, kind of, I guess. It's not really she doesn't have a illness per se, but she has dental disease. And with rabbits, if you know about rabbits, that is very serious. And we've been kind of through the ringer at this point, attempting to get her booked for a surgery that was recommended by her vet, which we've been seeing this exotic specialist. It's a whole long story, so I'm not going to go into it, but it's coming up. And so I'm very much in this place in my life right now where school just started. My birthday is coming up on September 5th. And then Spicy's surgery is on September 7th. And I have my start of my internship for this school year on September 6th. So, kind of everything's happening next week. And so I really was okay, let's take a breath. And I want to talk about all my fun crafting things today before life kind of hits me in the face rather harshly this upcoming next week. But all that to say, I've been feeling very fortunate and lucky that I have creativity and crafting to lean on during these big shifting times in my life. And I've kind of seen people talking about crafting and creating in a similar light, where it's kind of a really nice constant that you can just keep coming back to, even when things are changing and life gets kind of stressful. And I don't know if anybody else out there is like this, but change is very, very difficult for me. um, there is not many times when change has not been very stressful for me, and usually some things in my life tend to change and shift in ways that aren't for the best. Just in terms of like my self care rituals and habits, things I do to keep myself healthy and active and everything like that tend to go by the wayside a little bit when I'm going through these really big periods of shifts in my life. So, yeah, that has kind of been happening. I've been keeping up with a weightlifting routine over the course of the last couple months of summer. And I'm not going to talk about it here. I mean, if you're really interested in it, I would like to talk about it. But I would like to wait for people's input because obviously I know it's not knitting or crafting related. And it's also a sensitive topic because I fully understand what it's like to be in the world where weight loss is heavily pushed to people. But I was doing weightlifting as a way to take care of myself and to strengthen myself to help some joint issues I was having. And that's kind of gone by the wayside. So that's been sad, but I've still been heavily crafting. So I'm just kind of taking everything in stride and trying to continue prioritizing making through everything. So I relate if you are also somebody going through big changes right now and who is also leaning on crafting to help you through. So I'll get into the crafty stuff and we'll talk all about how life has been going and school's blah 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 started. So I will get on with the fun stuff. But to start, I will start with what I am wearing, because this is a make that I've actually had for a pretty long time now, which is actually very exciting. I feel like a very accomplished knitter at this point because I've finally had some garments that I've had for, like I've made and now I've had them for a while. And so I've been able to see like kind of the more full lifespan of my knitwear and kind of how it's all holding up. So you're probably recognizing this pattern. It is a Jessie May ripple crop top. This is in the fingering weight version. I also have the pattern for the worsted weight version, and I also made one of those. But this is my very first one I ever knit. And it is knit with a yarn that is very important and special to me because it was made by a very special, amazing natural dyer. So if you follow me online, you probably know who it is. Starbath Dyes, Mina, made this yarn, dyed it rather. I don't know why I keep on saying made it. And this is in the colorway Planet of Love. This was one of the very first ever hand-dyed yarns I purchased because when I first started knitting or taking up knitting again, from the initial times that I learned to knit, I was primarily knitting with a lot of Cascade yarns. You can find them on yarn.com / I believe it's also called like Webs, like America's Yarn Store, their website, and they have a lot of yarns on like clearance sale, and that's where I used to buy all my yarn. But this was the first yarn I bought that wasn't discounted and was hand-dyed and very special, along with being made by a fellow queer person and a fellow trans person. It was very important to me to be able to support them. And so whenever I have a chance, I always love to support Mina and their work. So yes, this is the top. It is quite worn. You can definitely see in the pits there's quite a bit of felting, and there's also a little bit of differences in the color, just, from wear and tear. And, that's probably due to a little bit of not user error per se, but I could have probably taken a little bit of more precious care of this top. But I love it, and I'm not too, fussed about my clothes showing wear and tear, because that's how they should be, it's a good sign. It means they've been worn with love and worn often. And I tend to wear this top in the summer. It is a little bit warm, I will say, just in terms of, because it is 100% wool, I believe. I'm not 100% sure in certain of the fiber content and everything like that. I know it is a fingering weight yarn. And I believe the base is called Star Sock when you go to Mina's shop, but don't quote me on it. I will definitely put it in the description or put it down on the screen somewhere and let you know when I Google it. But yes, it is very soft. So again, it's probably not ideal to wear it in a top per se, just if you're concerned about a lot of friction, because there's some pilling. But overall, like, I have not really washed this top since I first made it, which I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit because I made it like over a year and a half ago now. So I had to have washed it. I think I've washed it like at least once. I don't know. Anyways, we're not going to think about that too much. Wool is antibacterial. It's fine. It's fine. But I love it. It's super soft. It's super comfy. It still wears nicely even in the 100-degree desert that I currently reside in. I definitely recommend Mina, and of course I recommend Jessie May for this top. I could knit a million of these tops. I think I stand with everybody when I say that, because it's just like the ripple crop tops just fly off my needles, even though they're fingering weight. And I think I knit this on like size 5 needles, which feels kind of small for me. But I'm a pretty loose knitter. But either way, yeah, these tops just fly off. I could make a million of them. I really want to make another like long sleeved version or like 3/4 length sleeve version, because I think they look so cute. So yeah, that is what I'm wearing. So let's get into some of my works in progress before I ramble too much longer. Okay, so my first work in progress is I'm gonna call it like an uncertain whip, because it has been a little bit of an interesting journey for me. So you've probably seen that I've been working on this, but this is what is shaping up to be a Earth and Air sweater, designed by James and Watts, who is a lovely, wonderful designer. I'm sure that you've seen a lot of their designs on Instagram, once again associated with Jessie May. So, we're keeping it in the knit friendship family. But this is a really fun design, and I think the finished sweaters in this design are amazing. They look super comfy. And I'm really excited about this yarn and everything like that. So I am knitting this with also Starbath Dyes, Mina's beautiful label. Woo! I finally have a ball band to tell you things about this yarn. So this is knit with Starbath Dyes. This is a BFL untreated worsted yarn, and it is called Mustard. And so I thought it was going to be perfect for the upcoming fall. Side tangent, also, I've been trying to knit more with color and experimenting with wearing color. This is something I do want to talk about. I'll talk about it more later in another one of my whips that I feel like really encapsulates the embracing of color lately. But yeah, I really love this color. I've always been a really big fan of yellows, especially these mustardy, warm tones. So I've been having a really great time working with it. And it's not held together, but it's knit together with a mohair yarn. So you can kind of see it in between the columns. So this is brioche stitch as well. which I find very fun to knit. I know some people speak about having kind of like issues with knitting brioche, but I personally find it to be very beginner friendly. I just think it looks intimidating when you see the terminology. But I would definitely recommend, if you do decide to try to learn to knit brioche, what I did is I really wanted to knit a West Knits Stephen West shawl, and I watched he has like these amazing videos where he literally will go through like step by step in some of his shawl designs. And so I learned to knit brioche by knitting the Bubbles and Brioche shawl by West Knits, which I'll show in a future episode. But that was how I learned to knit brioche, and it came super easily to me. And I think that it was primarily just because his instruction was very clear. He shows things knit continental, he'll show it knit English style, which is what I knit, and I'm a thrower, I guess, or a flicker. I don't freaking know. So I do one of those English styles. So this is a very fun thing to knit. But the reason why I said it was kind of uncertain is for a couple of reasons. First of all, I do not know if I'm going to have enough of this mohair to make the full garment. And this is definitely my bad. Sometimes I like to refer to myself as kind of like a chaotic knitter, just because I do things like this where I'm like, oh, I have this yarn and I also have this yarn. I'm just going to go ahead and cast on a project because I know they'll work well together, and then completely disregard the yardage until, I've gotten deep enough into the project where I'm very attached, and then it turns into the whole hunt for color matching, which is not great. And I definitely should probably plan out my knits a little bit more, but who cares? It's just for me. And if I frog it, I frog it. But I love it so far. So these are them. But also another reason why I'm kind of feeling uncertain about this is because of the kind of like tension issues that I'm having. And you can probably see it when I hold it from back here. See how the stitches, everything kind of looks a little bit like wobbly. And so this sweater was in the pattern. It's recommended to knit at a pretty loose gauge. I believe the recommended needle size is like a 10 or 10 and a half. And that is initially what I started knitting this on. I didn't swatch. I just cast on the body because, once again, sometimes I like to be a little bit chaotic. And also it's a very like oversized, loose fitting sweater. So I was like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And I started off knitting it on like I have size 10 needles. And they're metal, so that's also why I decided, I'll size down a little bit, because I believe it was like 10 and a half or so. And that's why I started on the size 10s, because I'm a loose knitter. They're metal needles. I knew that it would kind of be a little bit slippery and loose, and so that's how I started out. But then, once I had knit like 2 inches of the body, I felt like it was so loose. Like my stitches were like really gaping, really large, to the point where it almost looked like lace, like in the sense where they have like a lot of big eyelet holes. Like that's kind of what it looked like. And I was like, I'm not vibing with that. Like I don't like, James has a lot of amazing patterns that are like mesh, but this was one that was not like that necessarily. So I don't own a lot of needles either. Like these are all the circular needles I have like up here. I just have a couple pairs, and I buy all my needles circular, and I also buy them on 40-inch needle or 40-inch wires or cord, so that I can knit a large swath of objects with them. Because I love magic loop. So, all my small circumference stuff, I do magic loop. And then obviously I can just knit any garment with them as well. Because I have a 40-inch bust. So at least I'll be able to fit my size and then, some positive ease on my needles. And so I don't have a lot of needles. So I decided to size down needle sizes to the closest size I had. And that is size 7 needles. And so I think it says a lot too for how loosely I knit, because I still think it looks pretty sheer and loose at the end of the day. And I also decided to use these size 7 needles because they're wooden. And I was having a lot of struggle with dropping the yarn over as well on the metal needles. So I was like, I need something with a little bit more grip. I need something that's a little going to give me a tighter gauge. And hopefully, I was hoping it would help with some of the tension issues I was kind of having initially. But as you can see, it's still kind of wonky. So I asked a couple people on Instagram, just kind of like, hey, have you also had this issue with this project? Because I've never had my brioche stitches ever come out like this before. So I think it really is just a matter of tension between the lace weight and the worsted weight, since they're so different in this stitch pattern. And a couple people said that they did, and that they're just kind of hoping it'll block out. So that is my current hope, and all of my hopes and dreams for this project is that, it will block out. That's kind of like the motto of this project. It'll block out. So I will definitely keep everybody updated as to what happens with this. I really hope it works out, and I really hope that this tiny bit of mohair will be enough. I will probably have to make another mohair purchase to finish this top, because I do want to do it like with the longer sleeves that go to like elbow length. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just having fun. It's fun. I will say this is also, the mohair is Ritual Dyes Faye. I actually purchased this on sale. I believe that also the color name is Smoke Line, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure, but I did purchase this yarn on sale through Tuesday of California. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. I'll link it down below, of course. But they previously had a DIY section. So they are a company in California that does a lot of size inclusive clothing, really fun designed. It's started by an illustrator and designer, Tuesday Basson, who I really admire. Had been following since I was on like Tumblr. And they had a DIY section of their site where they had knitting and like yarn and stuff, but then they did a big sale on all of their DIY stuff, and they had Ritual Dyes Faye on sale for like 50% off or something wild. I think maybe even more than that at the time. So I snagged a couple of skeins of this yarn, but now I'm down to the little itty bits, so wish me luck on this one. Moving on to my next work in progress, which is my very fun, colorful, exciting whip. Oh my gosh. Guys, do you see this? So do you see it? So this is the outline raglan designed by, guess who? Jessie May, of course. It's amazing. I loved this design from the first time I saw it. When it was first announced, I was like, oh my gosh, finally, yes, like this pattern is for me, because I really love the outline series, but I had never knit any of her outline designs. So what I'm referring to is what you see on here. It probably looks really wild if you're not accustomed to this design, if you're not quite aware why exactly it looks like there's a bunch of drop stitches, because there is. And so this design is knit with, with raglan increases, as the name would suggest. And then in between those raglan increases, you're creating this column. I'm like trying so hard to showcase this. Oh my gosh. You are creating this column of purl stitches that at the very end of the body, once you knit everything up, you then drop. those stitches. And then you get to have the fun task of pulling it all out until you get the wonderful pattern design that is this. So I'm very excited about this knit for many reasons. First of all, I mean, like, the glaringly obvious thing is that it's intensely bright. And for me, like, I think for a lot of other knitters, maybe this is like, yeah, this is the standard. But for me, I really wanted to challenge myself in the sense of trying to knit something very joyful and exciting for me, because I tend to try to stay very safe into what I'm comfortable with, you know, comfortable with wearing, comfortable with being like seen in. And it all sounds kind of weird, but I have a complex with colors. And I think it really all like kind of comes down to being kind of more of an introvert. And that is not to say that introverted people cannot love and wear loud colors. But for me personally, I found that throughout my life, I've always tried to stay with very safe colors. Colors that wouldn't make me stand out too much, colors that I was very comfortable with, and then I would kind of stick to that color palette. And throughout my life, that has mostly been a lot of like blacks, grays, blues. And it wasn't until I got older, more recently, and kind of becoming more comfortable with myself and my queer identity and my gender identity, that I wanted to start exploring kind of like what my colors are. And that also reminds me, Starbath Dyes does these amazing color readings based on your astrological signs and everything like that. So I'll definitely mention that in the description if that's something you're interested in, because Mina is very knowledgeable about all of that. And I've always kind of wanted to do a color reading by Mina, so maybe that will be in my future, hopefully. But yeah, I've just kind of been exploring because I've never quite known, like, what colors do I actually like? And it might kind of sound silly because it's kind of intuitive for some people, but for me, it hasn't always been. So this top, you know, and even like this yarn have been some explorations into me just being like, hey, I like that color a lot. Why not, you know, why not make a garment and in that color? And that was also what this was. So this is knit in Purl Soho's Cotton Pure yarn. So you can see it here. It's in the colorway called Lemon Mint, and I love it. I really love greens. I think on my Ravelry it says like, oh, what's your favorite colors? And I'm like, gray and green. So, you know, still keeping gray in there in the mix, as you can see in my background. But I do love greens as well, especially as I think I mentioned last episode, I'm loving these like chartreuse, yellowy greens. And so I had seen that this pattern released, and I had also seen in tandem that Purl Soho happened to be having a cotton and linen yarn sale. And then I was like, oh, that's very convenient. And also my birthday is coming up, so why not treat myself, right? Because this pattern is knit in cotton yarn. And it happens to be a sport weight yarn, which was also what the pattern called for. So, I mean, come on, like, the stars really did align in this circumstance. And I immediately saw this color in the color selection on Purl Soho, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. I couldn't look at any other of the colors and consider knitting with them. I was like, this is just the color. This is the color. I have to knit it with this color. Even though I knew like I don't have any other clothing items in this color. So yes, this knit is very adventurous for me, as well as the fact that I'm knitting with cotton yarn, which is another adventure for me because I typically don't knit a ton with cotton. I've always loved the feel and drape of wool primarily, superwash, non-superwash, whatever it is. And in the past, I had knit with some cotton yarns that were very stiff. And so I kind of had a lot of issues with wearing them and touching the yarn. It didn't feel great to me and was a very big issue for me in terms of trying to knit with them. I don't really know why, because I have a lot of cotton yarn that was passed down to me from my grandmother's stash, but some of it I struggle to use, and I would like to gift it to some people in the future. But anyways, I digress. But the cotton pure yarn is extremely soft. I was really shocked, and it has just a really lovely drape, and just everything about it feels really lovely. I didn't really expect, I didn't really know what to expect or expect that this yarn would feel so nice, but I had also seen, the test knits and the sample of this sweater design online and seen how that cotton looked. And I just felt like, oh, it looks so nice. So yeah, this cotton pure yarn is a very good like duplicate, I would say, of the yarn that the sample and everything of this design was knit out of, in terms of what I can tell just from looking at it online. But yeah, I had a really great time knitting the body. It just flew off my needles as well. I started this on the 21st, I want to say, and then I'm already cast off on the body. And that is probably the fastest I've ever knit anything, especially like a garment. So I'm knitting this on size 6 needles, and I'm also knitting the size medium, I want to say, like the third size. I decided to size down based on the recommendations in the pattern. I still wanted to have an oversized fit, which I believe I will, but I didn't want it to be too large, just in terms of I wanted to keep an eye on the neckline. I didn't want to make it too large to fall off my shoulders or anything like that, especially because I am a very loose knitter, as I've stated before, and I was knitting on metal needles, so I was like, okay, I better size down one needle size or else things are gonna get very large. And this is already looking pretty nicely oversized, so I'm very excited about it. I did want to briefly talk about some lessons I've learned in this design. Lesson 1, cotton is unforgiving. In terms of tension issues, any sort of little mistakes you make will be noticeable. You can kind of see here, I'll show you an example, where I've weaved in my ends here, and things just kind of got a little bit wonky and wobbly. For me, it's like I really try not to care in terms of like these minor imperfections. But if that is something that concerns you, I mean, I guess it's just something to be aware of, because it wasn't something I really thought about a whole lot. But you can just see, some of the things like these were like I did the short rows, and these were like the slip one like GSR stitches where you have like a double stitch. They kind of like show up a lot on mine in terms of like my tensioning and stuff, which is fine because the neckline kind of rolls down, and it's a very nice like unfinished. There's no ribbing on this neckline, which is nice. So that was one thing I learned, is just that, hopefully a lot of these things will block out, but there is a little bit of like character on mine in terms of areas where things get a little lumpy and not as neatly tensioned as I would like them to be. But also something I've learned is to probably follow the cast on that's recommended in the pattern, because so I knit most all of my garments with a cable cast on. And I've just kind of always done that. Like, I started learning to knit again. I learned to knit socks, and I followed a blog post by somebody called the Winwick Mum. I will link it here somewhere. And she has an entire sock along like tutorial for people who are new to knitting socks, and that's how I learned how to knit socks again. And I highly recommend it to anybody who's intimidated by socks because everything was broken down so well for me. But I really liked the cable cast on that I learned for socks. It keeps things pretty stretchy and nice. And it's also a very easy cast on because unlike a long tail cast on, you do not have to like estimate, how much yarn you'll need for the cast on. You can just go. And if you Google tutorials on the cable cast on, you can see what I mean. But that is why I always prefer the cable cast on because it's just easy to start up. And I find with myself, if a project starts with something that's a little bit more involved, I get pretty easily intimidated and I'm like, oh no, it's like scary to start and then I won't start it. So I've tended to just start with a cast on that I'm very comfortable with. I will do provisional cast ons for certain projects if I want it to be very special, but for the most part, I do cable cast ons. In this case, I probably would stick to the long tail cast on because I think that my cable cast on was not sturdy enough for the areas where you drop the stitches. So when you start the column of drop stitches, you start from the edge, the ending edge, and you start pulling upwards until you get to the neckline. And I was just on my happy way, having a lot of fun, being able to drop stitches on purpose for once and not be fussed about it until I got to the neckline area. And my neckline stitches fully came undone. Like, I was so shocked when I started pulling out the purl stitches, and then my neckline, a couple of my neckline stitches also came pop undone. And if I would have kept pulling recklessly, I feel like it would have fully unraveled my cast on edge. And that would have been horrifying because I really want to wear the sweater. And so luckily, I had enough peace of mind to very carefully stop. Where the stitches had popped out, I put a little plastic stitch marker all through the loop of those stitches to hold them, and then I kept going along. But you can see here, I had to do some surgery, and there is some areas where this specific spot is a little bit threadbare compared to other places. Because after I learned my lesson on these first spots, I more carefully and made sure not to unravel the neckline here. And I did some fun random sweater surgery. I don't even know what I did at this point, but I just basically try to take the purl stitch that I was pulling out. I took the one last final loop. I ran some extra yarn through it, and then I pulled it taut and kind of weaved those ends into the neckline area, and then weaved those ends in to the back. It's kind of convoluted. It doesn't really make sense. It was just my only way I could think to save those stitches and kind of reinforce these small areas so that my entire neckline did not dissolve and I would not be able to wear the sweater. So all of that to say, if you knit this sweater, I would definitely recommend following the pattern to a T in terms of the cast on and everything else, just because, it was designed that way for a purpose. Jessie May knows what she's doing. She understands the anatomy of these outline stitches more than I did as a beginner to this design. So I would definitely recommend don't go too rogue with this, just to be careful, because I almost completely dissolved all of my hard work on this. So my last work in progress before I get into all of the fun finished objects that I currently have is this sock. And this is also a chaotic random project. But as I think I've mentioned earlier, I have just started school again. And so that means I'm reading a lot. and I'm on a lot of Zoom calls because I'm an online student. So all of my classes are over Zoom. And so that means I can angle my camera just right and knit through class. But I will say, I knit to keep my attention in class and also on my readings. Because if I don't have something that is kind of keeping me interested with my hands, I start to fidget with other things, I get distracted, or more than likely than not, I'll grab my phone and start scrolling. And that is not needed. And that makes all my homework and everything take forever. So I usually start a sock whip once I start school. And this is the one I just grabbed the yarn off my desk and started going. So this is, you might recognize it a little bit, is my hand spun yarn that I also knit my balaclava #1 out of. This does not have a pattern. Like, this is just a very standard vanilla sock pattern. I just really wanted to use up this hand spun yarn. I didn't have enough of it to do really all that much else with. I just had this one final ball. And so once again, I decided to be a little bit chaotic, and I was like, I don't know how much yardage this is. Let's just knit. And so if this ends up being a single sock, so be it. I'll wear it mismatched with another one of my single socks I definitely have in my whip pile somewhere. So this is it. I've just been loving how I can see how my color management really turned out after, finishing this yarn and everything like that. Because I feel like in past projects that I used this in, I did a lot of ribbing or different things like that. So I wasn't able to clearly see how the colors all fell. And it's also really great learning an experience for me for my future hand spun yarns to be like, oh, I did this for this yarn and this is how the colors kind of looked. So it's something I can consider in the future because I really love how these like little micro stripes and everything turned out. And the heel looks a little bit funky because I held it together with a bunch of scrap mohair yarn I had. It's actually 2 different mohair yarns held in different areas. So this top area, you might see it's like has a lot more of a halo. That is also the mohair that I used to finish knitting on my balaclava #1. And it's Ritual Dyes Faye. And then the rest of the heel, as well as the heel turn, is held together with another bright green mohair yarn I had. But this one has less of a halo. The mohair, the brighter green mohair, is the one that came with my Artifacts of Appreciation sock set for the spring collection. And I decided just to use it in here because I finished plying those batts and I'm not sure if I'm going to use them for socks anymore. But yeah, so this is just my fun when I need to focus knitting project. But I'm really loving it. And I really love the feel of this yarn. I know it's not going to be great for socks because it's a Malabrigo merino wool. So it's very pilly. It's very soft. But I don't really care. I'm just going to wear them around the house. I feel like that's how it is with a lot of my knits. I'm just like, I'm going to love it. And even if I have to darn these a million times, I'm going to love them. So, yes. And that's also why I did the heels like this. And I'm also going to do the toe held with mohair just to hope and pray that it'll add the extra amount of strength that these socks needs. So, yep, my fun little sock. Following up, mentioning my Artifacts of Appreciation Batt Spring Sock Set. Here it is. Woohoo! I still have one more ball of singles left over. And I don't know what happened, but I have it left over and I don't really know what I should do with it because it's a really lovely color. It's the darkest color batt that was in the set. And so I'll explain. This yarn I plied as a 2-ply. And I just love it. I think it's really beautiful. I love the grays, but I also love the little peaks of different colors that were mixed in. This is a woolen spun yarn to the best of my abilities and knowledge. I've been reading Yarnitecture by Jillian Moreno lately, and so I've been trying to learn more about different methods of drafting and plying and yarn preparations, wool preparations, all that fun stuff. But I mentioned in last video these were spun from a batt, and so that is a woolen preparation of fiber. I believe for the most part I kind of drafted it in the sense where it would be more of a worsted spin, but I also kind of did whatever I wanted. So it did end up with a lot of like fuzz and wooliness, and it's very light. I weighed all of these and they're only about like 80, I want to say like 84 grams. So very light and fluffy and very soft too, with the addition of the alpaca that was in the set. So I'm very excited for these. I still don't know what I'll use them for because I'm not sure if this will even be enough for socks. Maybe some shorty socks, that could be fun, but that is to be determined. So I'll definitely be keeping you all updated, but I do love how these turned out. And I am thinking about spinning up some, I just have like this plain light gray Corriedale top in my crafty closet over there. So I'm thinking I might spin some singles of that since this batt has Corriedale wool already mixed in, and maybe just ply this together with some Corriedale and have some fun Barbaro Poly, dark gray and light gray yarn to pair with this set. So I'll also keep you updated on that and see what fun fiber adventures await me. All right, and my second finished yarn is this one. Woo. It's very purple and beautiful. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my last episode, but these were all some singles I had been spinning from a Falkland hand-dyed roving I had from Kumasi. And I love the color so much. It's so lovely. So I had spun all these singles. So this was like a 4-ounce braid that I had of this yarn. And I spun all these singles up and I planned to do a 3-ply with it. And I also planned to use this at first as like a sock yarn. So I spun all the singles very tightly. But I don't know. I mean, I think you might be sensing I'm very much an go by the seat of my pants spinner and knitter sometimes. So I came out with this 3-ply, and I just think it's a traditional 3-ply. I just think it looks really nice. And I just had a lot of fun with it. I love learning a new technique and just practicing being able to ply 3 singles together because I've never done that before. So yeah, I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. Once again, not quite enough yarn to do too much with, but I had some suggestions for some people to maybe knit a hat with it. And I think that would be a very great use of this yarn. I will say also, I prepared the wool in a fractal spin again because I wanted more practice with it. For this one, I split the braid in half, and then I split one half of that half into quarters, and that's how I went about it. And I spun all of those end to end. So that's kind of how I did the color management. I'm not sure if it really mattered all that much in terms of how like this wool was dyed, because it wasn't really one of those braids where there's like a big range of colors where you can see a lot more of the shifts. So yeah, but either way, I'm really excited, and I really like how everything turned out. I just think it looks really pretty. So yeah, that's my second yarn I've spun. Okay, and then last but not least for the whips, I think I said the other ones were one of my other whips, but last whips, I don't know. I have another spinning whip. So this is some singles for a very chunky woolen spun yarn. And I also apologize for saying chunky. But anyways, beautiful fiber. This was some wool roving that was gifted to me by a very dear friend named Rachel, who I've known for very many years and who actually kickstarted me all the way back in 2017 to knit something other than a scarf. She also introduced me to Ravelry for the first time, and I became aware that, like, oh, people knit things other than garter stitch scarves. Like, what? So this was dyed by 316 Dye Studio, and I've never heard of them before. I really need to look them up on Instagram because so far I've really been loving this fiber. So yeah, as I've mentioned, it's a woolen preparation. You know, it's a roving, and it's a gray base of Shetland wool. I believe it's, what does it say? 30% Shetland, gray Shetland, and 70% gray Shetland, and 30% silk, and it's a 4-ounce braid it came in. This is just some of the fiber I've already prepped by fluffing it a little bit. And what is next to be on my drop spindle, you can see here. I'm actually gonna grab it just a moment. So this is my trusty student spindle. It has a little liter of some very pink acrylic yarn that I've had literally since the 5th grade. Like ever since I started knitting, I've had this yarn. So I'm using it as a leader, and it feels kind of special to have it on my spindle. It never comes off of it. So I'm spinning this yarn with this guy. And I have been, like I said, I've been reading yarn texture. So I've been trying to learn more about how to learn some new techniques for my spinning. Above, you know, what is just intuitive for me. So these singles, I've tried to spin a bit thicker than I'm used to. I want to also try to challenge myself and spin a yarn that is not just a fingering weight or a sport weight, because that's what I've kind of tend to do. And I'm also practicing some techniques to spin it also in a woolen way. So I'm still very much a beginner with a lot of these different things. Like, you know, I don't measure grist in my yarn, and I'm not super well informed like that. But I try my best to make some new fun yarns that I will like to hold and touch and knit with. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'll definitely let you all know how it goes, but I've tried to incorporate a lot of air into this yarn, so I'm very excited for how it turns out. Okay. So I've just kind of realized I've gone kind of out of order. I think I got a bit excited because I showed some finished yarns, but now I have my one finished knitting object that I completed in the time that I did my last episode. So I'll insert a picture of me wearing it because it's kind of hard to see since it's such a dark yarn. But this is my rib lace raglan, also designed by James and Watts. And I love this top. I wish I should have worn it today. Maybe I'll wear it next time I film. But yes, it is a raglan sweater. You can see the raglan seam here. And it is this really lovely rib lace pattern where there's like lace in between the columns of knitting, and I really loved knitting this. It flew off my needles. It's very cropped, and it's also short sleeved, so it went super quickly. I will say it was a little bit of a journey getting through the yoke because, oh my gosh, the yoke section seemed like it took forever. So the yoke goes down quite far. You know, it's most of the garment is the yoke, honestly. And I also knit this in the yarn that I was also wearing in my last video, which is Pearl Soho Linen Quill in the color Stillwater Blue. And I felt like this is a really great garment for it because the linen content, as well as the wool content and everything in this yarn, make it a great transitionary kind of piece where it's great for summer because it's kind of light, and it has like the lace pattern in there to give you some airiness, as well as like the nice way that linen kind of helps that out a little bit. But it's mostly kind of like warm as well, which I like because I really want to be able to wear my knit pieces in more than just one season. I try not to have too many pieces of garments like that I just wear in one season, apart from obviously like my very heavy sweaters, because unfortunately they'll never work in summer. But with some of these tops, I really like to try to make them in materials that I can wear kind of year long. And also, I don't know if I've mentioned it, but I'm originally from the Midwest. I was born and raised in Illinois, and I went to college in Kansas, in Lawrence, Kansas at KU. Woohoo! Rock Chalk, if anybody else is an alum. So I fully intend one day to move back to the Midwest, to be closer to my family and my partner's family and just all the things that we love. So I'm just mainly finishing off my master's my master's program here, and starting the process to gain licensure as a clinical social worker for my own future goals. So that's really what we're doing here in California. So yeah, I just really wanted this top to be a summer and transitory fall piece, and I could even layer it up even more and wear it in the winter. So yes, I love this top as well. And it's also another fun piece where it's like an unfinished neckline, but it kind of looks unfinished, but I did actually do all of the I-cord finishings. So scratch that. I don't know why I thought it was unfinished. I think because my bottom edge is kind of curling a little bit just because I had some tension things, but I did do all of the I-cord finishing on the sleeves and everything, and it's just really well designed and really lovely. So highly recommend this pattern too. Wow, okay, that was a lot. I went through everything, so that is really all of the crafting I've been doing. So for those of you that know, I'm also a stitch marker maker. I make little polymer clay stitch markers and notions and different fun little things like that. I'll insert a picture here. But I recently had a final done and dusted summer update for my stitch markers on my site in my shop, and I had a really lovely time with that. It was just so much fun, and I'm always just like blown away by how many people show up and help me out and support my shop. It just like means so much, and like people who just really love my style and my artwork, it just like literally warms my heart. So that is something that's fun that I did, and now I'm gearing up to make some fall designs. So I'm very excited to show them on here. I have like a plan that I'll do like a little bit of a debut of the new designs on my podcast so that people who like to watch and keep up with me here can kind of see them before I officially post them on Instagram. So that's something fun to look forward to. I don't have any exact date for when I'm gonna do that shop launch slash shop update, but it will be pending because life is about to get pretty busy here in this next upcoming week. And so if I'm not as present online as you usually see me, that's most likely why. And I think I'll leave off there today. But yeah, so thank you so much for tagging along and listening to me go on and on and on again about knitting. I'm still trying to figure out formatting for this little knitting podcast. I hope this background maybe is a little bit better than last time. Who knows? I'm just kind of having fun with it. So yeah, thank you for sticking around, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!